Welcome to the TED LinkedIn Live interview, where today we'll focus on the question, as AI evolves, how do you stay ahead in the workplace? I'm Chi Perlman, and I'm excited to be joined today by Scott Likens, who's the Chief AI Engineer of PwC. But before we get started, I want to add that TED relies on the generous funding of our partners, and this LinkedIn Live interview is made possible thanks to the support of PwC. Scott, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Chi.
Good to see you, Scott. So you are the Chief AI Engineer of PwC. You are leading the AI engineering and emerging technology R&D teams, and you also drive the firm's strategy around AI, blockchain, VR, quantum computing, and other disruptors. So here's my question for you. If you were explaining your job to, say, like a very smart high school student, what is it? What would you say that you do?
Yeah, it's quite a broad spectrum. I look at my role as really trying to understand and do the research around the most emerging technologies, and then try and take that into what it means to our enterprise, to ourselves, to our clients, to the world around us today. And part of the challenge is emerging technologies, they may be further out into the future, but understanding the trajectory of what's happening is really important in the sense of doing things today, creating strategies and investments. So maybe not a high school level simple description, but understanding what's happening in technologies at the edge and translating that into what it means to businesses today is really the challenge ahead for me and my teams.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like it's safe to say your world has undergone some seismic transformation over the past few years.
Yes.
Let's talk about what that means, though, and we can get into some specifics here. What does that mean for those of us in the workplace? Let me start by asking you, which industries do you feel are seeing the most significant transformation, the most impact right now, specifically around AI and technology generally? But what are the industries you're seeing that are probably feeling this seismic change?
I think if we look at the era we're in right now, which is obviously the era of AI, first ground ourselves, AI has been around a long time, and 70 or 75 years we've been researching and developing AI. I think the past 2, 3, 5 years, there's been just an enormous amount of invention and innovation. And with the investment behind that, the past 2 years means that almost every industry is seeing foundational or fundamental change in what AI can do for them. I think other technologies that we've been through these waves on, maybe isolated in early days in a certain industry and then expanded. I think the wave we're in now, it's almost pervasive to every industry. And I cover all of our industries. I'm not an expert in all of them, but understanding where AI can play a role, I'll almost take the challenge of any industry. I'll find a way that we could fundamentally reinvent parts of that with AI, with the power of both generative and kind of good old AI that's been around a long time. So that it's a really, I think that's the difference in this wave. It's not industry specific. It's not even function specific. If we start to dissect the functions within each industry, there's opportunities. There's
Hmm.
probably pervasive functional opportunities, and then sector or industry specific opportunities by function, whether we're thinking
Hmm.
finance or IT or human capital or operations or supply chain. So that's part of the challenge. I'd say the other challenge is the pace at which it's moving. We've been through technology revolutions. They've just taken longer. I started in the early days of the internet working on what could be one of the first browsers, Mosaic, back in the 90s. But I think that's 4 decades ago. We had time to absorb it. It's changed, it's evolved. And while AI has been around a long time, this generative AI, at least this wave of it, is happening much faster. So I think it's more the time scale and the pervasiveness. It's probably not like we've seen before. So it's a little different.
It's not like we've seen before, and in so many ways, it's even hard to process what we are seeing, even as it's unfolding. But you
It
you
is.
are on the front lines. You do have this front row seat in both innovation and leadership capacity. What do you think that you know workers, people who are kind of used to having a status quo in their job, but they see this coming quickly. How, how would you advise them to stay relevant? What kind of strategies would you share with us?
Yeah, it's always the question. And sometimes it's from the executives or the board, and sometimes it's from the staff that are wondering what's next. Is it taking my job? I always start with curiosity, and that's one of the things that I've had a lot of my whole life, and that's why I've been able to stay in this mode of always at the edge. I'm always curious. I want to know what that next thing is, but I think today's workforce has to be curious in the sense of what can AI do for them? How can it be accretive to what they do every day? I think of it as a superpower. No matter what you do, there's some way AI is going to help you do that better and faster and maybe do things you didn't want to do. So there's that curiosity in the sense of how do I use it for good in the sense of my day to day? How do I use it to take tasks off my plate so I have more time for my family or my friends? Right? There's that curiosity that has to be the starting point. And so I always start with that experimentation. Try it yourself at home. Use it for something with your family.
Mhm.
Research a trip. The basics, and you have to start to build. These are new muscles. These are not things humans have had access to before. Thinking about ultimately infinite intelligence and reasoning and capabilities that we haven't experienced. So some of this is the biological is a little bit slower than the technological right now, but have that curiosity, do some experimentation, and then start to translate that into what you do day to day for your job. What are you passionate about? And I think that's how you start to get comfort. Some of this is about building trust in the technology. We have to trust that it's doing something that we want it to, and sometimes that's uncomfortable. I go back to that pace of change. Speed can be the enemy of trust. Things are changing fast. I don't know if I could trust it. So I think a lot of this is about the humans themselves absorbing this, building that muscle around how we use AI, not looking at it as something that's taking my place, but something that's expanding the place that I could actually exist in, giving me that access and power, really a superpower in what you do. So
Mhm.
that's both at home, but that's in the workforce, and that's a struggle. That's a long change to make in a workforce. And we've seen this. We have a massive workforce of professionals around the world, and how do we take them on this journey, make it safe, make sure they do it responsibly, but give them these powers that just bring new capabilities to life and transform how you work. At the end of the day, maybe it frees up some time to go do something fun, and that's what I like.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the question of trust, and I do want to get to that. But share, if you would, just a couple of examples that you've seen people kind of come to that aha. Oh, wow, I can do this. I can use it for that, or this will make my job in what way more streamlined.
Sure, the easy one and the one we started early and people are talking about. So this is not probably shocking, but software development is changing. And as a software engineer from the early days of my career, although I started as a pilot, switched into software. Software engineers changing, and in a good way. It doesn't mean software engineers are going away. It means software engineers now have capabilities that they didn't have before. So we've really kind of doubled down on this, and I'll just be fully transparent. Sometimes good engineers are the hardest to convince because they're experts. They're great at what they do. They're engineers, and they know how to engineer. And telling them that this tool is going to make them better is sometimes a hurdle. And what I've seen is once you get them over that hurdle, the light bulb goes off, and in the capacity and capability we're seeing from our people is just mind blowing. And I won't give specific stats, but it's high double digit, capability increases. So what that means to me is this brilliant team I have is 10x more brilliant, and we're going to produce better quality technology at a higher pace, and we're going to deliver more to our clients with higher quality. So software engineering is one, but I like to look across our business professionals. And we do tax advice, we do audit and attestation of businesses. And there was a conversation I was having in the early days when it was really just more of a chat to an LLM. And a pretty senior staff said, I asked a question, and it got it wrong. It hallucinated. And my first question was, did you tell it that it got it wrong and that it hallucinated and you wanted it to try again? And she said, no, I didn't. And I said, well, wouldn't you have done that with a human? You would have said, you got it wrong, go back and try again. And the light bulb went off in the sense of, I didn't think about it that way. I didn't think about it as a digital equivalent. I thought about it as a chat bot. And, so there's these moments, no matter what we're doing in our work, thinking about different ways, that new muscle we're building to use AI. So we started to look across all functions of what we build internally, and whether it's finance or within IT and technology, or we're doing in human capital, we're seeing these opportunities just to change the way people work, and then translating that into, how we support our clients and how we give advice, and, infusing that AI as that augmentation of the knowledge we already have and the experts we have, and expanding what they can provide. So it's really, again, it's pervasive, and I can go function by function and give examples. But I think it's that light bulb moment you have to find for each person in context of what they're doing. It has to make sense to them, and then, man, they're on board, and and they just create new capabilities and ideas super fast.
Okay. I'm loving your enthusiasm. I also wanted just to remind our audience, send in your questions. I'm sure there are many. We'll try to get as many as possible. I'm going to follow up with that one, though, and to just come back to the workplace and ask you a question about leadership, because I think that's also where leaders are also concerned about their own vulnerability and their jobs. And I'm interested in, sort of how do you give them permission or help them understand how to take AI and integrate it more fully without threatening or seeming to, look to displace any of their teams.
Yeah, we really start with this idea of responsible AI has to be the grounding that you use as you roll this out to your organization. We have to provide a safe and secure and responsible way to actually experiment. And even at the leadership level, I've talked to many board level or C-level executives, and they're very supportive. They see the opportunity, but then if I ask them, how do you use AI every day? And well, I don't use it. And I said, that's the wrong attitude. This will help you just as much as your workforce. So I think leadership is showing that I personally know how to take advantage and use this to the benefit of what I do every day, and then providing that safe, secure permission to experiment. But there's a lot to do to make sure it's safe and secure, right? This is not a single way to do that today. So I think you have to ground yourselves on doing it responsibly, giving some permission, and then choosing areas of your business that you're going to double down as a leader. We're going to reinvent how we do this piece of our business. We're going to take some risk, and we're not going to. I don't like the fail fast. I like the learn fast. We're going to learn fast. We're going to pivot in the sense of how we're using AI to reinvent this part of our business, and then we get to ROI. Right? We believe if you do RAI, responsible AI, right, you'll be much better positioned to have that ROI, the return on that investment. But the ROI is really just about the core business. You're measuring it the same way. Did we get to more markets? Did we create products faster? Is it more efficient? It's not about cutting headcount. It's about the market opportunity, about the revenue, the transformation or reinvention of something we're doing. And we're starting to see that. I think last year was very experimental at the leadership level. This year, we're seeing real investments in production, hitting the bottom line from a revenue perspective, from a margin perspective, from a market perspective. It's not about the efficiencies. That's how you learn, but it's about the reinvention and rewiring your business. So leaders have to lean in. They have to use it themselves, and they have to make it safe and give that permission to use it throughout the business.
Yeah, I like what you said about let's retire the fail fast
Yeah,
model.
it's not a failure if you're
Learn
pivoting and
fast.
learning from it. Yeah.
Mhm. I do want to ask you, and you raised this, and it's been raised by many. We've just come back from our some major flagship TED conference, and
It was
you
lovely. I
were
was there.
there. And thank you. And we heard some fierce warnings. I mean, we heard from a number of people that were ringing a very loud alarm about things like a digital coup or what unregulated AI could end up threatening us in many ways. We're very concerned about democratic institutions and our freedom and our identity. So I guess I would be remiss in I think we are at a moment where there's some trepidation and real concern. And from your point of view, and you've explained you've been in this and been doing this for so many years, and it's been around. But what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I actually, if I compared TED last year to this year, there was a very drastic energy change around AI. Last year was super positive energy. This year there was a balance. There was definitely some worry. What keeps me
Mhm.
up at night is this pace of change, and I think it's the time scale that's frightening people. Again, we've been through dramatic technology inventions and innovations. Just it's been over more years or even decades. So I think that the part of the thing that keeps me up at night is the pace of change, and then the pervasiveness of change. Not only are we seeing AI and so specifically large language models increase in their capacity at a rate we couldn't really predict before, we're seeing fundamental change in the compute infrastructure. So the actual hardware is changing to provide more capability. As you mentioned, we're looking at things like quantum computing and neuromorphic or biological computing. So the fundamentals are changing. The interface to how we access these is changing. It's being built into more and more things almost invisibly. So it's that pervasiveness that I worry about. So how do we actually know what's happening? Um, I do feel like, as PwC, this is one of our passions, being responsible about this, setting the standards now and the guardrails, working with the right standards bodies, both non-governmental and even governmental. I think for the first time, we've started the discussion about responsibility in the beginning versus at the end. And, I go back to the early days of the internet. It was like, just connect everything and then we'll secure it. This time, at least we're talking about it so that, the TED event, having those worries out there, that's important to get the conversation at the table. And so I do feel like that's different, but there's a lot to put in place. I don't want to
Mhm.
stifle innovation, but we have to do it responsibly. We believe in trust in design and by design. So all along the way, building those trust guardrails in, and then using the technology to help find the vulnerabilities, right? So AI solving these AI problems. And so I think there's more opportunity to do that. But this is a passion of ours and something we weave into every conversation and every architecture and every piece of engineering because it's so important right now. But the pace and the pervasiveness are the things
Yeah,
that worry.
it is the speed of change right now, and yeah, I'm glad that TED could be a platform for people like you to hear some of these
Yeah, it was
very
really interesting discussions. Yeah.
existential concerns. Yes, our audience is jumping right in here.
All right.
So I'm gonna take some questions. One question is about humans. The question is as AI gets smarter and better at thinking jobs, where do humans fit in? And I guess maybe you could take that to be a question about the future. Is where are we going to be as humans in 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, it's a deeply philosophical question, and I always go back to about maybe 100 years ago. Most of us were farmers, and today we're not. I am a little bit, but most of us are not. We eat fairly well. But again, that's a 100-year transition, and again, it's about the speed of this transition. I work at a large professional services firm. We've gone through, going from 10 keys to Excel, and I don't think any of our people want to do math on paper. We trust Excel. So there's been these transitions. They've just been in a longer time scale. Now, this one's definitely larger. And when you think about, human intelligence and reasoning and that's a much deeper question. I always refuse to predict 5 years because I think predicting 5 months right now is tough. But there's no doubt this is going to change our interactions with information and knowledge. And as a professional services firm, we're thinking about this every day. But it's also creating new opportunities. As I mentioned, with this infinite access to information, what else can we be doing? Could we be solving much harder problems? And I think we saw this at TED this year. There was a lot going on in healthcare, in pharmaceutical and biomedical, gene editing. There's going to be much harder problems we can solve. So I think we're going to pivot from almost the mundane we're doing today to the groundbreaking type of work we can solve. Going to space, solving disease. I've heard quotes, we may solve all disease in the next decade. I mean, that's amazing. That's great for humanity. It means we're going to be doing different things day to day from a work perspective. But I believe humans as a species are very adaptable. The question is this time scale issue. But I believe we will adapt. We'll take this, to the benefit of society, and hopefully everyone's marching down the AI for good path. And that's one of our passions.
Yes, I think we underestimate how adaptable humans can be. But that said, we have a question from somebody who's concerned about sort of the early career. They ask, what does AI mean for people who are earlier in their careers and trying to enter this workforce? It seems like it could be replacing a lot of entry-level jobs. How are people supposed to get experience?
So we've been doing a job study over the last 2 years. We look at 1 billion job postings, trying to understand the true impact of AI. So we'll publish that in June. It's actually got some pretty positive messaging. What we're seeing is it's not taking jobs. There may be some, but very small amount of jobs going away. What is changing is the tasks within jobs are changing rapidly, much more rapidly than we thought. So the jobs themselves, if you're a project manager today, you're likely to be a project manager, but the way you project manage will change. You're going to take advantage of these tools, and AI will help project management be more efficient, more effective, have less waste. So we're going to track that. I think I look at, graduates ask me, what should I study or what degree should I get? And I think we're seeing more momentum in engineering than ever, right? But it's more broad. It's electrical engineering, mechanical engineering. With the advancement we're seeing in robotics and space, there's tremendous new opportunities for jobs. But it all goes back to the same math and science and chemistry and biology. It's just a repackaging of how we bring it to life in jobs. We're still hiring CPAs and accountants, but they're going to have to use AI as they do that CPA and accountant work. So the job isn't going away; it's changing. So I think we have to monitor that. 5 years from now, I do not think this statement holds up 5 years from now. Again, my refusal on 5-year predictions, but it's about those critical thinking skills you build, the logic, whichever path you're going in. And then there's the human side, the philosophy and the understanding what this means long term, the humanities. That's important as we connect as humans. So I think it's changing the jobs, but I'm bullish on the new jobs it's going to create. Bigger problems, bigger jobs.
Are you a little bit alarmed about the shift also in education? And I guess I should say that, are you a bit concerned that people will stop feeling it's even necessary to go deep into the critical thinking and the humanities, because there's so many ways it can be solved just with a quick question to ChatGPT?
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the way we teach today, at least in the U.S. I think the curriculums need to change. I think we need to be mindful of these new tools. We're seeing early patterns, so it's very little data that leveraging AI as precision tutors is having an outsized impact on students' performance and growth. So I'm more worried about how we teach. I'm not worried that people don't want to learn. So I think if we change the way we teach, the schools can adapt and adjust, and we're going to have a much better outcome. But I think humans are curious by nature, typically, so they're going to want to learn. And if you learn with an AI, that's great too. And understanding that helps you build that understanding going forward. So I think it's a combination. I'm still bullish on learning and curiosity. I think that's the fundamental starting point in this new world.
Our audience here is certainly very curious and eager to learn from you, Scott. One of the questions that's come up, and I'm sure you've encountered this as well, is the environmental impact and sustainability. Is that something that you're dealing with in your world? And
yeah,
what are your thoughts? Because as you say, the speed of change is so fast, and we're exponentially, the requirements for energy and resources is skyrocketing.
Yeah, I love this question. I know there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and there with this mass increase in demand for processing, therefore energy and water. We actually just released a study where we built an AI systems dynamics model to try and look at the next 10 years of climate impact on AI with some different levers around how big we think that would get. The headline of the story is actually it's going to put us in a better place. So what you're seeing right now is tons of innovation because of the demand. We're having to move very fast to provide this compute for AI. There's tons of innovation in how we're doing that. So the chips are getting more efficient. You're seeing breakthroughs that we didn't think possible. The generation of energy is changing. You're seeing things like nuclear come back online, small nuclear inventions, different ways to create energy in a much greener fashion. So the innovation for AI, which is probably, data centers may hit about 10% of global electric use. Well, that innovation is going to permeate the 90% of other industries that are using the same electric. So we're going to get a net benefit if we do this right. So I like the innovation side solving that problem. There's no doubt this is going to take massive amounts of energy and water. But if we do that the right way, it's going to benefit all these other industries. So I'm a bullish believer in innovation solving this problem, using AI to optimize this in a way that we couldn't have before. And we've published that study. It's a very detailed scientific study. So happy to go find it and we can debate it.
Yes, more room for debate. And
Sure.
yes,
Sure.
yeah, I appreciate you acknowledging that these are real
They're
issues,
real problems. Yeah.
real problems. We have to wrap up soon. I know you have a flight to catch, but I didn't want to let you go without one last question, which is, Scott, we were speaking about this earlier. It really kind of is very heartwarming to me to learn that you live on a farm and you raise a lot of animals. And for you personally, you're in your own kind of sense of balance. I tell us about how do you make that work for a kind of holistic, intense job with what's happening so quickly and the speed of change, and then raising goats.
Yeah, so it's probably one of the crazy anomalies of my life, but I do live on a ranch in Texas. I did that coming back. I lived in Hong Kong 5 years, and I really wanted to get back to nature and out of the cities. So this has really grounded me in this crazy pace, this time scale that we're not understanding. Being able to step back and just watch how nature continues to progress, and watch how it fixes itself. So, through whether it's rescuing animals and bringing them back to a beautiful life, or just raising, goats, alpacas, emus, cows, and horses, it just gives me this grounding so that when I get back to the pace on Monday, I've had this peacefulness. And it's hard work, man. I'll tell you, clearing trees and buying hay and my weekends is hard work, but it's just such a mental break, and it allows me to reflect on what's actually happening. So it's given me this grounding, and I love it, and it's a great balance. So thanks for asking about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's lovely to hear about this sense of balance, and that you found a way to do that. Scott, we want to thank you so much. We've learned so much from you, even in this short interview. We hope to continue that with you. We want to thank everyone for their questions. Apologies, we could not get to all of them. And then finally, thanks to the support of PwC for allowing us to do this interview and have this conversation. And we will see you again next time. Thanks
so
everyone.
much. Great job.